openers.
Yeah, Dan Bongino unfollowed the quartering because the quartering was asking him questions about the Epstein stuff. And I thought the quartering didn't even go that hard. And I even made a little meme too, because I went back to that tweet that everybody was like going after. And then he put out another one earlier today that's got a bajillion, impressions now, because he was saying something along the lines of it's always best to be honest. And it just seems so weird and out of place. He hid so many replies. If you click on the tweet, you'll see a little thing in the right hand corner of it, and it's just loaded full of like hidden replies of people not even like being that rude, but being like, "Hey, dude, did you sell out?" Like the deep
Right.
state, so on and so forth.
Right. Dan had to expect it somewhat. Maybe he didn't think it was gonna hit him as hard as it did, but he had to have some expectation of people are like, all right, you're going from, the guy we trust into the government position, which you were in before. So you're gonna
Right.
hold your feet to the fire. A lot of speculation and questions kind of still surrounding that. I saw a funny meme today that had like lizard people pointing guns at Dan and Cash, basically holding them hostage. A lot of people think that was kind of. I've heard it, the phrase repeated multiple times today. That video, that interview, was a humiliation ritual, which I know is kind of a thing among some of the secret societies and whatnot. I don't know what kind of humiliation ritual this would be for. Like their initiation into the FBI. I doubt it, but nevertheless, I've heard that said repeated multiple times today, and so I don't know. Just the main underlying theme is nobody believes that these dudes are being genuine, and the questions that people are asking are all valid. Namely, what is it that you've seen in the files that made you change your mind? And ironically enough, nobody's accompanied it with this question, but that I'll add. And why isn't that file that you've seen, the stuff that you're having a look at, why wasn't that released in, round one of the Epstein file release that Pam Bondi put out? What are you looking at that's different from us? And why are you withholding that when you're supposed to have already, released the information according to the, basically the head law enforcement officer in the country in Pam Bondi. So lots of questions, weird scenario.
Well, it's funny too, because Anomaly, after I'd mentioned on our show 2 nights ago, he put out a video talking about the fact that the bigger thing is the fact that insert in there was the fact that they also were downplaying both the assassination attempts too, which was a major thing that I caught, which I think obviously falls away when the bigger one's the Epstein stuff. But this wasn't even just like, most people are just obviously bewildered. And I think what really drives it home for me is watching Alex Jones get mad. Like he had a video earlier today where he was pissed off. He was like, "Don't piss on me and tell me it's raining." Because he was like, "There's no there's no good explanation for the change of heart on this." And then Roger Stone ended up backing him up too, coming in and saying like, "I have no idea what the hell is going on anymore." And I don't know. It's a rough feeling because we get all this stuff from James O'Keefe, and then it seemingly just like dies. It's like now there are no big things coming out. He even had that thing where he's like, "I'm fearing for my life," right? But then he was spotted at a Florida party on a rooftop, like in Miami, clubbing with like Luke Rutkowski. Is like, I really don't think you're fearing for your life when you're on a rooftop, dancing around. He's wearing like a bulletproof vest. It just felt like to me, this is also why like I have such a deep rooted distrust no matter what. Like, obviously I like certain people, but at the end of the day is like, when it seemingly is, we can't do anything to stop the fall of the West, no matter who we're putting in there. It just makes me think, what is there? And part of me too thinks, what if Dan Bongino was shown like, hey, there's people on this list that you were never expecting. I know I mentioned Trump before, but that would be a huge devastating thing, right?
Right.
Like what happens at that point? If they do find out that actually maybe Trump was a bit more involved than like what we let on, I mean, that would devastate the country, right? Because then you would go from obviously the Bill Gates and the Bill Clintons and everyone else, right? But you even have like Alan Dershowitz going on, what was it, Benny Johnson's show? He was like demanding, he's like begging that they release the list.
Yeah.
Which makes me think possibly.
And he was Epstein's lawyer. Alan Dershowitz was Epstein's lawyer. It's worth noting as well.
Yeah. And he's like, because I'm getting accused and all these allegations are going against me, like just release everything, man. I'd like my name to get cleared. But also on that same hand, if he's so confident calling for it, and then a lot of people think he's involved, maybe he knows in the back of his head it's never getting released. So I can get some brownie points by demanding that they release it when I know I talked to some guys. It's already all gone. It's never getting released.
It's kind of a black pill moment, to be honest with you. When you get 75 million people to vote for Donald Trump, essentially through proxy, voted for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to be put into a leadership role. Kash notably was already being speculated. Dan Bongino being like icing on the cake, essentially, that came afterwards. But you get your guy into the presidential seat. You get the majority in the House, the Senate, Congress, whatever. Then you get your guy in the FBI, and then his guy, also your guy, in as his assistant and the deputy director of the FBI. And then they come out, and I'll quote Dan Bongino: "The there you're looking for isn't there, right?" And they tell us that there's no there there, and it's just like, well, great. Guess what?
Yeah.
I'm checked out now. I'm checked out. This is a black pill moment of the government is lost if my guys can't deliver any kind of truth. And it's like what Alex Jones said, that I didn't even know he said that. Don't piss on my head and tell me that it's raining. An old saying that applies well here. That
Right.
if your guy is going to come out here and first interview start telling you the same stuff that you have been told, after saying things like what he says here in this video, things that he said, in 2023 and whatnot. It's a black pill moment. And it's like, look, I'm checking out. Fine. The Democrats can have the future elections. I'm not going to participate anymore. I think you're going to get that hardcore MAGA America First base. They're going to check out. They're going to all start moving towards, look, you're moving their lifestyle towards, like, I'm looking at buying land. I'm going to homestead. I'm going to care for myself. Or take the option like, look, I'm gonna sell everything I got. I'm moving to Costa Rica or whatever it is that you can live cheap and you know what I mean, and just check out, and just none of the above, the entire thing. And that's going to be devastating for America. That would be pretty much, in my opinion, the end of the republic.
But that's exactly how we got here in the first place, was the retreatism. It was all of the guys who we wish would be in politics having that sentiment and saying like, man, F this. And they go out, and then that's when you put up your don't tread on me flags. But at the same time, you get landed whenever it's cool. But it goes back to the saying of like, it doesn't matter if you don't care about politics. Politics cares about you. And when all the good men go out and just say, hey, leave me alone, I'm not going to bother anybody, don't bother me. Well, all that leaves is the crackheads and the leftoids to run the government. And we see exactly what happens with that. And we're in the middle of like getting a lot of more young men, not even just in politics, but also getting more involved in the churches too. That's why I've been so keen on like maintaining momentum. You have so many guys, at least in the beginning of it too. And I mean, it's probably still there somewhat, especially with moments like with the South African president. But there's no need to stumble, fumble, or shoot yourself in the foot. You have all the momentum in the world. Keep pushing. But when you have instances like with this Bongino stuff, but maybe on a bigger note, with the Doge cuts, like it's essentially being a scam because they keep voting to continue funding these things we wanted to cut. It makes it feel like, and then you see someone like, are you guys tired of winning yet? And I'm sitting here like, bro, we're barely winning at that. Like I'm not tired yet at all. Like I would like to see so much more. And obviously that causes conflict because you end up getting so many people who are just super pro-Trump, and they do the whole 45D 60 chess, and it makes it toxic because then you start criticizing things and be like, hey man, we're not getting enough. It immediately puts you in like the whole like, no, you got to believe. And it's like, yeah, but where do you draw that line, man? How many days does it take before you're eventually like, okay, nothing's happening yet, or at least the pace is so slow. We're starting to talk about who's to be president next, right?
Right.
So when do you draw that line of saying like we're doing enough versus we're not doing enough? And I think we're already at that line where a lot of people are like, not enough is happening.
Right. And the proof is in the pudding. What the fewest amount of bills signed by Congress in the first 100 days or 120 days since like 1970 or something. I can't remember the date exactly, but we're talking about decades. Trump's pace is obviously not being matched by Congress or the House, which the Republicans hold the majority of. Their pace should absolutely try to match Trump's, their boss, aka the American people, and they're letting him down. And Steve brings up, where did that truck of files go? And maybe that's where Dan saw the information that made him change his mind. I don't know, but if you have it, show it to us.
Right.
Who are you benefiting? What do you have to hide if you're not? TNT comes in and says, "Nah, most Americans have no idea who Cash or Dan are. They voted to close the border and fix the economy." That's true. I would argue that most Americans didn't know who Cash Patel or Dan Bongino were during the election, although Dan has one of the biggest podcasts, or
I was
had
going to say
the
Dan
biggest
probably way more
podcast.
than Cash.
And Cash had made his rounds, but it was on Tim Cast and the MAGA far right channels, right? You know what I mean? So the left avoided them completely. But I'm not necessarily talking about those folks. I'm talking about the people that are more plugged in, like myself and like you and I believe. And also I do agree with you that if they're checking out already, they're black pilled already on it, then they were never patriots to begin with. You said it's been a few months, bro. Put things in perspective. Yeah, and I'm just sending out the warning because I completely agree with you. It's still early. I'm still giving the benefit of the doubt, which is time. I can still call out, and I think you would agree that Dan and Cash should have just, pled the fifth on this one and not even said anything in the first place in this interview.
Yeah.
Cash even kind of giggles at the introduction of the question when Maria Bartolomo says, introduces the Epstein scenario. I believe it's the Epstein scenario. He like gives a giggle, like, I knew this was coming. Now I gotta address it.
Right.
Awkward feel. So, it's fair to call them out. They should have kept their mouth closed, but you're right, TNT. It is super early and I'm still on the Trump train. I just wish Congress, the House, everything would get to, like I said, once again, the pace that Trump is on. And it's disappointing. And this is just a warning. This is me calling out like, hey, this is where I see this current path taking folks like myself, at least. Maybe not you, but I think maybe a lot of the folks in the audience potentially would agree that, look, if our guys get put into the best positions and then they just start telling us the same bullshit, like, why am I wasting my time? At some point, I could learn Spanish or some shit and prepare for the inevitable incoming future that my life is going to have to deal with. Like, you can stop paying attention to politics, or whatever, for example. Right. So it's just a early warning signs, early red flag alert that I'm noting, that we're noting. And, as we call them out, Trump is notorious for paying attention to what's being said in the social medias and things like that, and making adjustments. And so, maybe Cash and Dan will see, our video. Oh no, but you know what I mean? Just see the wake of people disagreeing, and maybe they'll change their approach and won't be so disappointing every time they speak into a microphone. This is what Dan Bongino was saying in 2023.
Listen, that Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it, outside of a few entrepreneurial media outlets saying, hey, this is a big deal.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Listen,
So like I said, like a lot of other people have said, what is it that you've seen that changed your mind? And why haven't we seen it yet? Why hasn't it been released? And when can we see it? Because right now it just sounds like a bunch of horse shit. If you like this clip from the Jar Openers podcast, make sure to catch us live every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget to smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe now.